Agoda கிடைக்கும் low rates on flights. International மற்றும் domestic.
Hey guys, am I audible, visible? If so, say me a hi and hello. The ad is playing and I'm waiting for it to get over. Long ad. Hey guys, can you see me? Can you hear me? A very good evening, and I hope the week has started properly for you guys. Can you guys see me? Can you guys listen to me? If so, say me a hi and a hello. I hope I'm audible and visible. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Warburgs Effect. I have everything pre-written already so that it's easy for us to discuss more in detail rather than just writing it down, right? Good evening Rocky, good evening Aditya, good evening Swati. So what I have discussed Warburgs Effect in your essentials batch is more than enough for you to write an exam, answer questions and understand concepts. So since this is about your Read with Robbins series, I want to go a little bit higher than what we already need to know. Your CBME curriculum doesn't want this, but it's good always to know more, right? So we are going to read about Warburgs Effect. So Warburgs Effect is nothing but it's equivalent to metabolism of tumor cells. So Warburgs Effect entire thing talks about what tumor cell metabolizes, right? Now we'll understand what is the concern. Fine. So I want you guys to answer to this. A tumor cell is a fastly dividing cell or a slowly dividing cell? I'll go with very simple concepts. I want you guys to answer, that's all. Definitely tumor cell is a fastly dividing cell. If a cell needs to divide fast, am I right in saying that compared to a normal cell, it needs more energy? Yes. It needs more DNA, it needs more RNA, more proteins, more lipid, right? Is that statement right? Compared to a normal cell, a tumor cell which is very highly or fastly dividing will require more amount of all these components. Yes or no? Rocky, Swati, Silent Boy, Aditya, Trisha and Gokul. What do you think? What do you guys think? Definitely yes, right? Perfect. Now let's see what will happen to a normal cell during metabolism. Let's go back to your biochemistry. Whenever a normal cell consumes glucose, whatever be the form, it will go into glycolytic pathway. Can you guys tell me how many ATPs will come at the end of glycolytic pathway? I think there will be 2 substrate level phosphorylation, right? Then it goes to your citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle. Then it will go to electron transport chain, which happens in your mitochondria. So after it goes to electron transport chain, I have only 3 outcomes. One, it produces ATP. It produces carbon dioxide. That's why we call them as cellular respiration. It will obviously go into the lungs and will get expired and will exhale it, right? And I have water. This is how a normal cell metabolizes glucose. The concern here is whenever a normal cell metabolizes glucose, can I produce more protein? Yes or no? Or I'll produce only ATP? I'll tell my question again. Whenever a normal cell produces glucose, will it produce ATP only or it will also produce like DNA, RNA, protein and lipid? What do you guys think? You can answer, like it's fine if you make a mistake, but still answer. They'll produce only ATP, right? Like you can see my byproducts are only these 3. It'll produce carbon dioxide, it'll produce oxygen, it produces primarily ATP. This is enough for my normal cell because my normal cell needs to function. For its function, I primarily require ATP. A normal cell will not produce protein, right? Normal cell, when it consumes glucose, it produces primarily ATP only. That's what a normal cell does. But now let's come to our fastly dividing cell. Whenever I say a fastly dividing cell, this includes 2 things. Obviously tumor cells. Can I also say stem cells? Yes. So this Warburgs effect is not something which is discovered or invented by cancer cells. They are a part of my normal stem cell metabolism, which cancer cells takes an advantage, that's all. So for a fastly dividing cell, I need 2 components. One, obviously I need more ATPs because when I'm going to divide fast, energy is by default required, right? Second is I need metabolites. When I say metabolites, I need to produce DNA, RNA because cell division happens you know that that's semi-quantitative replication, right? I need to produce more nucleotides. I obviously need more proteins because there are going to be two cells. I need more lipid because there's a component of all the cell and organelles membrane, right? So am I right in saying this? Yes or no? A fastly dividing cell, a tumor cell, or a stem cell will require more metabolites as well as more energy. This statement is right. How will they take care of that is what Warburgs explained. So what Warburg said was, tumor cells, this is what Warburg's statement was. Warburg's statement is very simple. He said tumor cells consume glucose for sure, but they consume glucose by aerobic glycolysis. He said they will consume glucose only by aerobic glycolysis. This might be a one-liner for you in your exam, or they might ask you in your viva, right? Only by aerobic glycolysis. That's why they were able to channelize everything to produce my DNA, protein and lipid. We'll see how it happens. There are two main things which is involved in Warburg's effect. One is phosphoinositol triphosphate kinase pathway. The second one is obviously one MYC gene, right? Let's see what exactly happens in a tumor or a fastly dividing cell. Normal cell, glucose enters, goes to your mitochondria, electron transport chain, goes and produces ATP, carbon dioxide, oxygen, that's all. What happens in a fastly dividing cell or tumor cell is this guy will be activated. Phosphoinositol triphosphate kinase. So what this does is it alters your GLUT. What are GLUTs? Glucose transporters, right? So it will make sure that more amount of glucose enters. Whenever I have activation of phosphoinositol triphosphate kinase, I'll have more and more glucose. Let's assume normally a cell can metabolize 10 units of glucose, but here a cell is metabolizing 100 units of glucose. Can I say the intermediates start accumulating? Is that statement right? Normally I do it 10 times, but here since there's activation, I'm having more amount of glucose molecules. Will I do it 100 times? Definitely more faster, right? Which means all these intermediates will accumulate. But they keep on accumulating as a result of excess intake. My body will not be able to metabolize because I can read 2 pages a day. If you ask me to read 20 pages a day, 18 will be backlog. That's what happens here. I can metabolize 10 units of glucose. Here 100 comes, so everything accumulates inside. So what happens is, one of the accumulating compounds of glucose metabolism is acetyl-CoA. Have you heard about this? Biochemistry? The starting of the Krebs cycle will have acetyl-CoA, right? Pyruvate, acetyl-CoA and everything, right? So acetyl-CoA is a end product, one of the mid product of your glucose metabolism. This acetyl-CoA will be channelized towards lipid production. So I need to divide more. So obviously I need lipid, because once I divide, my cell membrane should be formed. So that lipid, the acetyl-CoA will be redirected. Again, if you remember your biochemistry, can I say for lipogenesis or a fatty acid synthesis, acetyl-CoA is important? Yes, I am redirecting it. I am eating lots of glucose, stopping them in between and using the acetyl-CoA to produce lipid, because this is needed for cell division. This what happens even in a normal dividing cell, not just in cancer. Normal stem cell also does this. So at the same time, second, this is very important, MYC gene. MYC gene is called as a master regulator of Warburg's effect. This also is an exam question. It controls major things in Warburg's. So one is more and more glucose entry. So what MYC did was, MYC activated multiple glycolytic enzymes, and also it activated an enzyme called as glutaminase. So when MYC activated more and more glutaminase, obviously glutamine will be there, and this glutamine will be utilized by mitochondria. So whenever MT stands for mitochondria, whenever mitochondria has excess amount of glutamine, they say that, okay, let me not undergo your citric acid cycle, let me stop that. It will stop glucose utilization at aerobic glycolysis, and it will have a byproduct that will be converted to nitrogen. This is very important step. Hello Rahul, good evening. We need not know what exactly chemical product happens. It's simple thing. MYC increases glutaminase. Because of that, glutamine utilization by the mitochondria increases. That converts all the end product of glycolysis into nitrogen. So once I have nitrogen, can I produce protein? Obviously, right. One of the important thing for me for protein is nitrogen. Can I produce DNA, RNA? I can, right? So I have DNA, RNA, I have protein, and with the help of this guy, I have lipid. So is these three enough for me to produce a cell? Lipid, DNA, RNA, and protein? Yes. Obviously, DNA, RNA, and protein is more important than lipid. That's why we call this as an master regulator, right? By the end of this, what I'll have is I'll have all the metabolites required for protein synthesis. Okay, needed for protein synthesis, we'll have it. So once we have all the metabolites needed for protein synthesis, that's enough for a cell to divide. Sorry, not protein, a cell, a new cell, or your cell division. So that's enough for a cell to divide. The same thing is what happens in your cancer cells. In cancer cell, Warburg's effect is being reignited. It's an effect being in the body and being used by stem cells for an uncontrolled replication. And the cancer cells made activated NYC, activated PI3K, and then they grew a lot. This is the base of Warburg's effect. Clear? Perfect. Now, if you have any doubt in Warburg's effect, let me know. Because it's theory. Theory doesn't make any sense, or it doesn't excite us unless and until it's going to be applicable practically. Can anyone tell me what is the practical application of Warburgs? Warburgs, there are only few take-home points. One, glucose is utilized by tumor cells by aerobic glycolysis, and MYC is one of the most important gene which controls Warburg's effect, right? Warburg got a Nobel Prize because of its practical application. The practical application of Warburg's effect is very simple. How many of you have heard about this scan? Have you heard about PET scan? How many of you guys have heard about PET scan? You might have. Some of you might have for sure, right? PET scan, the basis is Warburg's effect, right? The basis of PET scan is same Warburg's effect. It's based on Warburg's effect, that's all. We'll see how a PET scan is being done and how Warburg's knowledge will help us to identify this PET scan, right? So PET scan is positron emission tomography. It's like a CT scan, let's assume. What I do in PET is, the full name for PET is FDG PET. Fluorodeoxyglucose PET. That's what FDG PET stands for. It's fluorodeoxyglucose. Right? It's a modified or a labeled glucose, that's all, right? So what I do here is, I will give this to a patient. It will be injected into a patient via the vein, via venous access, it will be injected and goes to a patient whose blood sugar is normal. That's the important prerequisite. The blood sugar of the patient should absolutely be normal. Once the blood sugar is normal and the patient gets new glucose molecule, I want you guys to answer, who do you think will be utilizing the glucose more, a normal cell or a fastly dividing cell? Sure, Rahul, I'll do it. Who do you think will utilize them more? The patient is having a normal blood sugar and more glucose is being given to the patient. Who will utilize the glucose more? Tumor cell, fastly dividing cell, or a normal cell? Normal cell doesn't require more glucose, right? A dividing cell. I'll go back again, because this PI3K will be activated only in a fastly dividing cell, which will drive more and more glucose inside, right? So what happens here is, whenever the blood sugar is normal and FDG PET is being injected inside, all the fast dividing cell, which includes obviously tumor cells, the fast dividing cell will consume the glucose. It will consume glucose. After consuming glucose by aerobic glycolysis, will it emit radiations? Obviously, it will emit radiations because it is fluorescent tagged, right? And then I do a whole body scan to identify that. We do a whole body scan to know that, okay, these areas, okay, let's say in bone marrow, I'm having big positivity in radiation. I know that there's a good amount of fastly dividing cells in the bone marrow. In lung, there's a huge area where there's lots of radiation. I know that there's fastly dividing cells in the lung. With the clinical history, I can say it's a tumor, right? So this is what the PET scan is based on. PET scan is a way for diagnosis of metastatic deposit. Very important, again an important one-liner or a viva question. It is not used to diagnose primary tumors. If I have to suspect a breast cancer in a patient, I cannot use PET scan because PET is extremely, full body is having radiation. I can't use that. But I know for a fact, okay, this person has, let's assume, a breast cancer. I need to start the treatment. I need to do staging. For that, I do a PET scan, look for metastatic deposit. No metastasis, I'll do a different stage. Metastasis present, a different stage, right? It's only useful for diagnosis of metastatic deposit. Please write below, not for primary tumor diagnosis. The reason not for primary tumor diagnosis, yes, Rahul. The reason not for primary tumor diagnosis, it'll expose the patient to a whole body scan, which is not needed for a primary tumor diagnosis, right? So it's always for secondary metastasis only. This was the base of or the extrapolation of Warburg's effect, right? And the gene is MYC gene. That's very, very important. Warburg's effect has lots of applications in real life, which is very hidden. We don't know about it, right? How many of you guys intermittently fast here? The science behind intermittent fasting is also based on Warburg's effect only. How many of you guys intermittently fast? Or have you heard about intermittent fasting? You might have, right? So what happens is, somewhere in the mid of 2010 or 2012, that's when Harvard University gave a theory saying that when glucose is being stopped from a culture plate which has tumor cells, the tumor kind of slowed its growth because the primary raw material for tumor growth is only glucose. So if we stop glucose, the tumor growth shrunk. Then they released an article saying that if I intermittently stop glucose to a tumor cell for minimum 12 hours, this is the original article I'm talking about. Minimum 12 hours, if you stop glucose to a culture plate, the tumor cell's growth slowed down. People took in a different tangent. So if I fast for 14 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours, tumor cell will die. That's when all this intermittent fasting became a huge hit. That also is based on Warburg's effect. I am not supporting or opposing intermittent fasting. It's a good thing for sure. Anonymous, I wish I had the power of his, right? Look doesn't matter at all. If I had the power of his, it will be much different. We can do anything with medical curriculum. But still, thank you, Anonymous. Okay. So if you have a glucose-free interval for 12 hours in your routine, it will automatically stop the division of multiple unwanted cell division, right? Keep this in mind, which means I'm not saying intermittently fast. Eat dinner early, maybe 8-9 o'clock. Morning breakfast again at 8-9 o'clock. That's more than enough. Or in other words, be like the same person you were in school days. That's what you do in school days, right? Perfect routine. That is enough. That's what Harvard University diagnosed in 2012. Your mom and dad knew it much before than that, right? This is the base of Warburg's effect, right? Warburg's effect is a short note. You can come as a short note for you. So just structure a answer and go and write with it, right? I'm going to add one more concept here since we have a few more minutes for us to discuss. There's a concept called as oncometabolism. So oncometabolism, again, since we are talking about the metabolic change in the cancer, look at oncometabolism. So what oncometabolism say? Oncometabolism or an oncometabolic formation. It said that there are few gene mutation which creates a byproduct which supported mutation. That's what oncometabolic said, right? So there's one classical example for oncometabolic, which is IDH mutation. IDH stands for isocitrate dehydrogenase. Where have you heard isocitrate dehydrogenase till now? Can anyone answer that? You must have read in your first year for sure. Isocitrate dehydrogenase. So what oncometabolism says is, I have a normal IDH and you have a mutation, some random error, right? Let's assume it became, I'm writing M for mutated IDH. You must have read in Krebs cycle, right? I have in Krebs cycle your isocitrate dehydrogenase. So this mutated IDH converts your alpha ketoglutarate. That's where your IDH acts on to an oncometabolite called as 2-hydroxyglutarate. This is not a normal metabolite. A normal IDH will not give you 2-hydroxyglutarate. It gives a normal Krebs cycle forms, right? So this is called an oncometabolite. So they say that A mutation in an enzyme involved in metabolism will create a different product, because a different enzyme will have a different effect, obviously, right? So this oncometabolite, it said that they cause epigenetic alterations, right? They cause epigenetic alterations which can result in a cancer. So what do we mean by epigenetics is, epi means above, genetics is obviously genetics, right? So what epigenetic alteration they causes, they can cause DNA methylation and acetylation. What does DNA methylation do? Silence or activate a gene, right? Or a histone modification. They silence a gene, right? So what these oncometabolites can do is, can alter the DNA, can alter the histone, not the gene. Histone and DNA alterations chemically, which obviously can result in a cancer, right? So this is what is there in oncometabolism, and this is one of the classical example of oncometabolite, isolated dehydrogenase mutation. This can definitely come as a 2-mark answer if you have 2 marks in your exam, right? So an IDH mutation is classically seen in few tumors. I don't want you to forget these tumors because this has been increasingly used these days. Gliomas, IDH is very common in gliomas, right? Few leukemias. Even if you forget leukemia, it's okay with me, but glioma, please do remember, because glioma, that's CNS tumors, right? The glioma, on astrocytoma, oligodendroglioma, most of them have IDH mutation, right? So this also is the metabolism related changes in cancers, right? So today we have discussed 2 new concepts. One is about Warburg's effect, and what does Warburg's effect exactly do, and one about oncometabolism, fine? Okay, any doubt in today's lecture, do let me know. You guys are very quiet. I think it's a start of the week, so it's fine. If you have doubts, do ask me. I'll be on Instagram. I'll definitely ping you back. If I don't ping you back, put a question mark. Great. No other doubts? Let's call it a day. Rahul, you have to answer that. You know the answer for sure, I suppose. Proto-oncogenes, I can't methylate. If I methylate a proto-oncogene, it will stop the cell division. Because methylation is inhibition, tumor suppressor genes will be methylated. Proto-oncogenes will be activated, acetylated, right? Any other doubts? Okay, no other doubts, let's call it a day. Fine. Thank you, bye bye.